And I know we have some issues potentially with the thing I'm concerned about with this language is how do we phrase it with staggered terms of the counselors coming in? And I think that's going to make it really tricky because I wouldn't want to preclude a counselor who the board wants to appoint to the chair position, but they only have 1 year left in their term. I wouldn't want to preclude them from being appointed. So I don't know if we can do this, but one thing I was sort of thinking was, could we add some language that says up to a 2 year term or conclusion of the individual's term, whichever comes first, or some sort of language like that, which doesn't say you have to serve 2 years or you cannot serve as chair at all. So,
I would suggest that we just take out what I have outlined in um, green, because basically it just says each year you'll elect somebody. If they want to keep the same person, they can. They could keep
mhm.
them all 4 years if they wanted to, but they usually don't because there's again the staggering, and they usually give the opportunity to somebody else to go out there and have to speak to the different groups that and take some of the burden off of them, so they don't have it the entire 4 years. Uh, and especially if I'm proposing, and you've all received my all my proposals, but one of them is increasing the pay of the counselors, and so they're more, instead of part-time pay, more of full-time to do the job of managing a multi-million dollar, or overseeing a multi-million-dollar organization. And so it allows them all to be equal, all five people equal and equal pay. We could tweak it so the chair gets maybe $500 more a month, but they usually tweak it so that they have maybe a little bit more mileage for their cars and stuff. So there are ways that they could work that through. So it's worked well for 166 years. So I would just use basically what this section is under 2.2a is the current statutes. It seems to have functioned well, and I would propose not doing a 2 year term. I would suggest one, and I think this group is to sort of pose language, and then we'll have to argue that language with the rest of or discuss it with the rest of the group, I should say.
So,
In if I can kind of tag on to that, I'm okay with a 1 or a 2. So whether it's up to 2, I'm fine with Kelsey's language on that. Um, I'm not, just to respond, even though it's not part of our calling, I'm not in favor of making it a full-time pay equivalent because they are not full-time jobs. It's just like any community, maybe a bigger community, but the role is the same. It's legislative. And yes, they need to meet with their manager on some role, but that's well within the legislative prerogative. I don't see them having to meet with that manager on a daily basis or the other electeds on a daily basis and making it a full-time. Doug, I was confused with the one section where you got it green and a strikeout. I don't know what that means. Are you striking out the green, or are you?
Yeah, I would take out the green and leave the yellow, which says
Okay,
basically
then,
that
all right.
they elect one of their members as a chair.
I
And
understand that. Okay, but they can't do that until after the recent election is completed and they're seated, and that's after the general election.
well,
And
it's
it has to be.
the
It
first
can't be the
meeting,
next meeting. It cannot be the next meeting. It has to be the first meeting of their term.
Mhm.
right? And that's why I think the general election is sort of sort of meaningless, because the councilors at their first session of the year, that's when they
Of the
um,
next year,
yeah, of the year when they
or
meet.
of each year.
Yeah, the first session of each year, it says.
Yeah, maybe I would insert the word each.
Yeah, we should say each if we're going to do that. I took
Okay.
the after the general election phrase to kind of set a time frame, but also it makes it every year because there is a general election every year, in
But
every November, right? I
but
mean,
the
Correct.
commissioners though don't really care. Or, I mean, the county doesn't care about the off-year general elections or primaries. Uh, they're on every 2-year cycle, so it wouldn't necessarily.
But it could be each year, and that solves it.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
like see, that was where I was caught up too. I wanted to discuss the same issue, and I think either Doug's answer or Kelsey's answer is agreeable to me. Is that I do think that well, it seems to me that maybe 2 years would be a better term because it does take somebody a little bit of time sometimes to get their
Well,
feet under the ground, but on the
it
other,
doesn't.
on the other hand, yeah, these guys have to be ready to get up and hit the ground running. And if you want to keep somebody for 3 years, you're allowed to, according to the way we've got it worded right now. So that'd be okay.
Actually, I talked to, and I've been around. I've watched, been involved with the county forever, and I've talked to one of the former commissioners, and she was appointed a second time, um, and she said it. I mean, basically, they're just running a meeting, and then the staff gives them some paperwork on warrants or any other documents, which they just sign for the board. If they're on vacation or something like that, then the vice chair would sign that, or it used to be 2 members of the other 2 members of the board would sign. But she says, they really don't have a lot of responsibilities except for running a meeting. And most people uh, who feel comfortable running meetings, I mean, these folks have probably been in community organizations and been involved in running meetings in the past, and it's not really rocket science to do that. So she felt doing the 1 year, allowing the board to make the decision whether they want to keep someone for a second year or someone wants to make the case. It should have the flexibility to do that rather than um, she's wanting to know what the justification is. They don't have to wait 1 year to run a meeting better the second year. It's just running a meeting. And so that's why it's always been that way, and people have been able to manage it.
So Doug, are you our designated note keeper since we're sort of working off your Word
Okay,
document?
I will.
Okay. Okay. So can we recap like the two potential options? I want to jot it down too right now that we're going to bring back to the commission. So it's my potential proposed language up to 2 years or conclusion of the individual's term, whichever comes first. And what was the wording on yours, Doug? I'll let you catch your breath and take what I just said out loud.
Again, I would take out the green part. So the counselors at the first session of each year, take out the word, shall elect one of its members to serve as the chair of the council and elect a vice chair at its meeting. This way we doing the 2-year thing tends to complicate things in terms of these staggered elections, and keeping it simple, I think, is important in this process. So I would just take out the word "the" and put "each." So again, the county councilors of their first session of each year shall elect one of its members to serve, and let it go at that.
Okay, so I say, I mean, honestly, I don't have a huge preference either way. I know the commission kind of settled on 2 years.
Well, I think
But
they asked us to discuss it and come back with recommendation. I thought that's what they said, but
I,
maybe
I did,
wrong.
I did as well, but I'm okay with the Kelsey up to, not a flat two, because there may
Yeah.
be some people not willing to accept it for two,
Mhm.
regardless of their length of the term.
Yeah.
And that gets uncomfortable. So
I don't want to micromanage grown elected officials, sort of. I
Mhm.
feel like they know, I mean, having been on like the Parks Advisory Board in some capacity, like everyone is quite capable of making, rational decisions on who, I mean, should serve and when they should serve. So I guess we could just take both of the sets of language back to the group, kind of digest it a little bit. But I'm kind of confused on the structure of our main meeting. So are we supposed to go and request a time slot beyond the subcommittee update to get us on the agenda to have more dialogue about this, or what do they want us to do?
What I think they want us to present something, and then if this is sort of, then they'll come back to it for more dialogue. There are 2 points, and my sense is that they wanted us to have us give them some direction.
for the
So
second touch.
Okay.
yes,
And I understood that we do need to ask for a spot on the agenda to present our, what
I
we
think
found, what we
that's
decided.
on the agenda as subcommittee reports.
Yeah.
Since Kelsey collected
Okay,
this,
that's right.
I guess we
Yeah,
Okay.
need to have a
I
chair,
remember
so
that.
maybe Kelsey, since she started this process, she could be the reporter.
Fair enough. Full disclosure, I'll miss the meeting I'll
Next
miss
week?
one meeting at the end of May. So
Oh, it'll
hopefully
be
we
this
will.
next week. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'll be at that meeting and the one
okay.
next one. Okay, so um let's see. All right, I think I have fairly good. Do you want me to make like a little PowerPoint or
That would be great.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
have just another thing to throw out that just popped into my head is if we don't say up to 2 years, we're in a term, say if we decided to go with the the Doug language except minus the green, uh, and say each year, just so they don't assume otherwise, could we say that consecutive terms are allowed, or,
but they
do
do
we
it
need to say
already.
that?
They do it
Yeah,
already. If it doesn't say it, they could do it. They just have
yeah,
to elect somebody. They could be the same person for 4 years if they wanted to do it
right.
that way. I know Tom Milkey was not ready to take the chairmanship. He agreed on that. He didn't want to be out there. I think, has a reading problem, and um, so he didn't want to be put out there to read proclamations and all those type of things that the chair tends to get stuck with, and or awards, or they're running around making little speeches all the time, and he declined to do it 1 year. He eventually, I think, did it 1 year, but he really didn't want to participate, and it tends to suck up a little bit more of your time too, being the chair. So, but in talking to Betty Sue, and I probably talked to Steve Stewart, it seemed to me, they said, well, why would you want 2 years? I mean, it's there needs to be a rationale for 2 years. The law allows them to elect the same person over and over again if the group wants to, but usually it's never been a problem, she said. It was never a problem even sorting out who wanted to be on what committee, and all 3 of them could be on a committee if they wanted to. We sort of limited it here because sometimes there might be 3 people on the board that have a passion and want to attend a function, or attend a meeting, like the I-5 bridge thing or something like that. All of the commissioners were there in those meetings,
Right.
and I don't know how
Which is
many are allowed
allowed as
now.
long as it's published.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
Okay, well,
makes sense.
I'm not going to do anything super fancy in terms of this PowerPoint or slide. I'm just pretty much going to type up the verbiage and then I'm going to send it to you all to review just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then we'll just present the options in the subcommittee report. And then I guess we'll figure out if we are going to discuss it then or get a second touch and more in depth at a later time.
yeah, that's sort of Jeff's call, I guess, on that
Yeah.
process, how he's got it set up. There is a
Okay.
section D here that I like to talk about under 2A or 2.2, pardon me. And I think that part needs to, the first sentence needs to go because it sort of conflicts with the statute above. And I think they put that in there so that they could justify paying the chair a little bit more money. So it was just sort of, we need to have them figure out some more things to do. But really, it limits, I think, everybody's participation on these different boards and commissions that they would serve on, whether it's the whatever it comes up with. But
Yeah.
and just letting the council vote to appoint its members to boards and commissions. And again, Betty Sue said they've been doing that. It worked well for 12 years that she was there. There didn't seem to be a problem. And just as Kelsey says, let the adults handle it. And that,
Yeah, I agree with taking that out because I think our whole, one of our purposes here is to kind of levelize the field so that, you know, all the counselors are equal.
are two other sections on the second page if you wanted to go over the rationale for those.
Well, I'm still, we've been on this commission since January and I'm still confused about the process in terms of, is Jeff's vision, we're putting individualized, like a la carte items on the ballot, or are we packaging like section 2.2
Right.
into like a cohesive, this should be approved or not approved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
If
It will
you
not be piecemeal.
if you
Okay.
look at Clallam County has already put out on their website what the ballot will look like. You could get a general idea of things. In fact, they have very similar things that we're looking at doing.
Okay.
But yeah, it has, in order to package this and communicate to the public, we're going to need to have some values or themes. Everything has to fall under to make that happen.
But
And
we are separating the partisanship of the administrative and the legislative components, right? That is not packaged. We decide to leave that a la carte. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
I believe that,
it's
I believe
packaged.
those will be standalone, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be
Okay.
packaged, but it'll be standalone in that package. So
Yeah.
you have your two choices here, or the third choice is no on both, I guess, and we keep it with what we've got. So there's really
Yeah.
three choices. But yeah, and some of this may be put up in a what we call non-substantive category, because there are certain changes, changing from he and she to their or them or something, so,
Yeah.
so there'll be things like that. Yeah.
The other section in here is 2.2C. We just declared it in 2.2A where how the vice chair is elected, and here it is again. So it's in one or the other, doesn't need to be in both.
You're so
Yeah.
right. Yeah, we should delete C.
It
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So since we were just tasked with how to do the chair, do you want me to just add this like as a byline, like other recommendations in this section?
It seems
Or-
like that's it. This should be in scope. The vice chair ought to be in scope, also of our
Okay,
discussion,
We,
I think.
it was decided at the very high level of what's the role of the chair. That was pretty solidly decided. It's facilitate the meetings. So I
Mhm.
think within
Uh,
that, somebody else is going to have to go through B and clean out the stuff that is not that role. Because it's defining some functions of the chair that are greater than just facilitating meetings and being the ceremonial person. Because that's the council's responsibilities, is to do that as a body. If it's not declared,
Hmm.
or it's the manager's. Some of those things fall into the manager's role. So I think somehow we need to get that message back to Jeff to understand there's things, once we collectively made that choice to support chair facilitation meetings only, somebody else has got to define where these things go. Because they're
yeah,
valid functions. And I
So
don't think
that might-
that's not our scope right now, I don't think.
Well, I thought
Okay.
we were Article 2 was our scope, except for the how many districts. That's going to be decided or discussed later on today.
I understood our scope to only be how to structure the chair
Mhm.
appointments.
Okay.
Because I think we haven't done sort of a first touch, say you will, on, okay, if we do restructure the chair, then these dominoes fall, like Greg was saying, in
Oh,
terms of.
okay.
And
Yeah,
I, yeah,
it wasn't mentioned, so you're right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I get confused. Maybe it's my anxiousness to get through these articles and get them done, since we got people to do them. Because this is the most long drawn out thing. I know we got a whole year to look at each other, but
we're halfway done with it already, Doug.
Yeah,
You
but
are?
yeah, August 3rd is our August 3rd is our cutoff for ballot issues, right? If we want to get them on this year,
Well,
so.
for this year, yeah. But I
Yeah.
know we got stuff that we want to put on next year, because we have to judge what could be hot potatoes that we want on this year,
Yeah.
and stuff that will be a no-brainer easier maybe next year or whatever, or vice versa. Maybe we could put some of that no-brainer stuff in this time too.
I
but-
wonder if,
okay.
so we'll take it back to the main commission with what we have, and then maybe they'll send us back to figure out what to do with section B,
Yeah, that's what I was going to recommend. So I'll create language for the county council chair term. Then I'll make a sub note that we kind of like the housekeeping things, language about committees. I feel like we had a pretty thorough discussion on that, and we all kind of voiced that any counselor should be able to, be on whatever committees they're interested in based on a vote. But the other things, I'll say sort of like the hanging chads, if you will, of what is left in this section we're happy to continue to look at, but we need more of a first touch on it. So whenever Jeff decides, and Mike and Kim, to put that on the schedule. So just so I'm correct here, the other things we should touch bases with the whole group on are the language about committees. I just want to double check. I might have interpreted that we were kind of in a majority on that, but I don't want to offend anyone. The vice chair. So what were the sections, Greg? You said that it's duplicated in C?
C and A both, or excuse me, B and C both have the vice chair in it.
Okay. B and C. So we're suggesting that we just strike C from the language.
It
Yes.
should usually be
Correct.
done at the same meeting, so yes.
Okay. Strike section C. Okay, and what were the other components in this section we want to request a first touch on at a later date? Was that it?
B. wasn't it?
Oh, B, yes. B
Other,
needs
other
a-
than the, other than running the meetings, what other things does the chair do or not do, and or
yes.
the manager do or not do?
Yeah, and that's B, that's in B mostly anyway.
Yeah, I do have the statutes of what the commissioners do, but it doesn't really specify in statute. ex- I don't, well, I mean, I do have the statute, I think, in my comments, 36, 32, 100. But I think it's what's really in A is what the person is in statute is required to do. I think they added the chairs will be the county's spokesperson to articulate council policies, vision, strategies, and plans. That part's all, I think, that was put in new by the charter a few years ago. And
Right,
so,
and that's when it was an elected chair from countywide. I'm
yeah,
saying to some point, if I just use it as an example, and look at the city of Vancouver, our local larger charter manager council form of government, there, for the most part, the county manager does a lot of the stuff that isn't ceremonial. Strictly ceremonial, the mayor is out doing the shaking hands and kissing babies kind of stuff. Sorry, but old school.
Yeah.
The
Not
manager,
COVID friendly.
I know, but figure speech with
I
a
know.
mask.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
6 feet away.
so, the meeting and
Just
greeting
went that way.
important visitors, yada, yada. But the constituent response for the council as a whole and is a sticking point because in my form of government where I've served, we don't have that, where we don't have a council as a whole. We nominate the mayor to do that, but we only empower him or her to do that with a consensus vote. It's never just blanket given that he can speak or she can speak for us without that delegation. So I'm a little sensitive to that one being in there because the chair is just somebody they picked, but yet they're
Right.
going to speak to the world on what we think without them saying we think
Yeah,
as a body.
yeah, I hear you, Greg. Maybe you might have some suggested
I would
language
take
there.
that out is my best
Okay,
suggestion because
okay.
then they need to sort out their own rules.
Take B
I
out altogether.
A good chunk of it.
After the second, it's taking out the second sentence all the way.
Yeah, with all of its colons and semicolons, yes.
Okay, so just have the first sentence of B is what you would suggest?
I think so. At this time,
I
I'm
agree. Yeah,
some
I
of
think
this may move over to the manager's bucket though.
I
That's the
I
part I
don't think
can't
so.
tell.
I don't
I
think
don't.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I would just they probably added that piece in there just for the
I
politics
know.
of the time.
I
Yeah.
understand. It made him feel better.
And that's what we're doing. We're sort of cleaning up the politics of the time in this charter. And I think this is one of the areas.
That's why I volunteered for this one. So yeah, not trying to get
Yeah.
on a soapbox,
Good.
but that's where
I'm glad
that's
you
where
did.
my energy is.
Glad you did.
And I'll let you know who I am. I haven't, I didn't move to this county until 2015. So I missed a whole lot of that stuff. I just heard about it. So, you know,
Lucky you.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
was dramatic. Okay, so just to recap, we're striking the language about which committees the chair has to serve on or altering it, or these are our pseudo suggestions for follow-up work for our committee. We're striking C regarding the vice chair. And then we want to get a first touch from the group about potentially removing all of the sentences in section B besides the first. All right.
Asking the group or would that be our recommendation?
Well, I don't know technically if we're putting the horse before the cart before the horse, because I don't know if we've technically been asked for that yet.
Well, I think by
Oh.
raising the viewpoint, we can at least put it on the work plan.
Yeah, that was my intent to say, here's 3 other issues we found in this section. These are based on our early discussions where our subcommittee is leaning. We need a little bit more guidance to firm up the language from the group or get direction, I guess. And hopefully it's not a big issue. I mean, one of my struggles with this is 15 elected people on a commission is way too many people. And I'm all about representative democracy, but boy, it really slows the process down. So hopefully we don't have too many strong opinions on things that I
We
really
could
don't.
change that for the group next time.
Oh,
Yeah.
you better. I have thought about it like 100 times, Doug.
Well,
Oh.
if we're not careful, we may end up with 3 more of us in the next cycle by adding a 5th district.
Yeah,
Very good point, Greg. I didn't think of
Yeah.
that.
And then you end up with an even number again.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good
Mhm.
that I didn't think of.
I'm a strategy game player, so
Well,
I do that
it
all
wouldn't
the
be a
time,
game because you still have,
You'd have 18.
we have
which is an
3
even number.
Yeah.
5.
Because we'd make
Oh.
5 districts.
yeah. No, if you have 5
Okay, well,
districts,
that's
you
10
just don't-
people
oh,
plus the 3 at large.
Yeah.
That'd be
There's 3 from each district currently,
Oh, there are 3. Okay.
and 3 at large.
Yeah.
So we could have 2 from each district
Yeah,
and 3
you
at
could-
large, maybe, and that would make
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you can
That
do
might-
2.
Anyway, we're bouncing outside our boundaries, but it's
That's true.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. So are we good? I'll try to get this typed up by tomorrow so you guys have some time to review it before our meeting on Wednesday.
fine. And your PowerPoint doesn't have to be pretty, just clear.
It might just be like a Google Doc. Like seriously, between this and the Parks Advisory Board, I have like 12 hours of unpaid work for Clark County this week. So it might just literally be stuff on a Google document.
That's fine.
That's good.
If we have a moment on the second page, I'd like to have some feedback from folks. Of the 2 proposed changes that I had on 2.4, established to provide. I don't know how, but this is something that was brought forward by some elected officials. Thought the difference between establish and provide is sort of slight, but it's sort of like the difference between shall and may in some ways. But the board has to agree and pay, but there have been departments, sometimes the board tends to hide behind establish um, policy or rules, salary schedules, and times tend to change. The market tends to change because the sheriff is always competing with City of Vancouver for their employees. Assessor is competing with Oregon appraisers. I've had issues where I've tried to compete and get some very qualified people to do investing for the county and the taxing districts. And the prosecutor, and I'm going to just pick the civil department because that's the one that I know the best. When Kurt Wyrick or Bronson Potter or Chris Horn were there, they would be hiring staff and they need to find somebody in the market that has experience without having to spend a lot of time training and spending money on them. So they were trying to, attract people who dealt with maybe labor law or public disclosure law or something like that into their operations. And this served, I mean, they do have it. They can go to the board and do it, but this just served word makes it a little more adjustable to try to deal with market demands to get somebody in there. And so anyway, it's a small thing. It may not even make it all the way through the process of this year, but that was just one of the changes that some people just thought, instead of allowing the board to always run behind and hide behind this established process. No, they have a choice. They can either say, no, we're going to stay with it, or yes, it's a value to the organization. We need to maybe do a different compensation, because the county's never, the only once in that I could recall in the last 40 years has gone through a comprehensive um, compensation process. They've piecemealed it over the years, but nothing really comprehensive. Anyway, that was just one of the things. And the other one was down at the bottom, section 2.6 on number 4. Uh, I I know that there was some concern from the board at one time that um, they felt a disconnect, which I think is more of a management issue, and we've discussed this in the commission meetings a little bit about their role and responsibility. But I don't see them, and unless you put it in writing, say you need to be doing this and be held accountable. So one of my accountability issues up here, that they need to be doing this oversight for us to make sure that these county policies and projects and strategies and plans are being done on a regular basis. So I just sort of stuck it in there so that the public understands that this is one of their roles and responsibilities. So it's it's they probably already know and do this to some degree, but it's just this document, this charter, is also to try to explain to people what people should be doing and what they should be expecting these folks to do. So those are my two other comments on there. I don't know if these will what the result will be, if this is going to be part of that cleanup legislation or whatever. But this one is just trying to um, let let everybody else know what their role and responsibility is in this oversight responsibility, because I've been told at times where they'll sit in on meetings, or they'll they're just not connecting, but they need to connect, because it's that's what we're paying them for, is to review these policies and make changes and do strategic planning, long-term type visioning type of stuff, which I have no clue where the county's going right now.
Doug, I appreciate you bringing this one forward. In a broad brush, I agree with you. Some of the nuances of a couple of specific words, I don't want to nitpick it here, but I think we need to have this conversation about
Okay.
where does it belong and how should it be expressed. And I hope it would come after we hear from Mr. Kimsey's functions of what his group does and doesn't do, besides just election stuff. Because some of that is auditing related. And I know I'm not that familiar with his departmental role of what his
Actually,
group does.
all the stuff that I've mentioned, it falls under the county manager.
Okay.
Greg just does auto license, payroll. Um, they do the paying the invoices and warrants, and recording of documents, marriage license, that type of thing. All this occurs under the county manager, actually.
Okay.
So it's something that we should ask probably Kathleen.
Yeah, we should specify who's in charge of the function, of the oversight function, I think is what, because
Yes.
that can, that can be a sticky subject, if you put the fox in charge of the hen house type thing. So we don't want to do that, but
Well, they should be over verifying. I mean, if they say that they want their permitting process to and have permits out within 2 weeks,
Yeah.
they need to be checking that out and making sure, not wait for some person to come in to complain about that. Because then that's when you really have more than just you could have more problems than you at that point um, when that happens. So anyway, I just know that there's been some tension at one time and was brought forward between the relationship between the county manager and the council. I was trying to address that so that the county council knows that they do have oversight responsibilities, and we expect them to be on a weekly basis. I mean, I would do that with my staff and with the county finance committee. Would review our policies to ensure that what we're doing, that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And if we're not, we point that out and try to figure out ways of making that happen. Sometimes it deals with IT. That IT doesn't have the support or enough staff to do what they need to do to accomplish a task. So, and you'll find that out through this process. It's not to punish anybody. It's just to say we don't want to be caught by any extra surprises, like the
Oh, I
pandemic.
understand. I was an auditor for a while, and a quality auditor was what we called it. But you know, that was that was what we did, is we reviewed what different uh, departments were doing and how they were, you know, how they were doing it, and are they meeting all the requirements, or is there anything they can do better? And that's what we did, and we were, you know, I believe
You
we
sound
worked
qualified to be a commissioner or a counselor.
that, maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
We were, I think our boss was what would be what might be called the executive branch. It wasn't, you know, it was the plant manager, but then each of the departments would also have self-assessments, so they would, you know, do their own internal reviews to also to make sure everybody's doing what they ought to be doing.
Well, I appreciate
So
your
yeah, it
feedback
needs to be
on it.
done. I think it's a good thing to have in the charter, as that deserves
Well,
some good discussion.
there are people, I mean, you could get elected and not have the experience that actually all three of you have. Uh, and it depends on, you know, what wave that they're riding at the moment could get somebody into office. And so there are people who have been elected that really did not have the experience or knowledge about what you're talking about, John. And I think it'll be informative for them to understand what is expected of them, and they either need to quickly bone up on it if they're going to be that person, um, or maybe choose not to run for
Yeah,
office.
yeah. No, it's a good thing to have. I agree.
Well, thank you. That's all. I send this out longer if you want.
Are we done now?
I think so.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
All right.